I'm Jason Murphy. Hopefully you've spoken to me before, but if you haven't, I worked at Enable previously for about 5 years, and then I left to go work for a really big MSP, and then I came back in December. So I've been back almost a year now, but all in all, I've been working with N-central for pretty much the last decade. With me today is my good friend and colleague, Marc-Andre Tanguay. Marc is responsible for the bulk of what is in Automation Manager, and along with me, helps our partners on their automation strategy. So in front of you right now is the Success Center. So when we talk about things like N-central and automation, this is your one-stop shop for both. You can log a case, hop into our forums, ask me or Mark a question on the forums. You can hop into the MSP Institute and watch any pre-recorded boot camps or office hours. And we also have our ideas page. So what are the office hours? If you've never been here before, this is a topic-specific Q&A around N-central, pretty big platform, and also automation. You're going to engage with industry experts. Myself and Mark work with MSPs all around the world. And we also are here to foster an online community. You can use things like Reddit. You can use our forums to engage with people at Enable. Also, grow your business with tips, tricks, and best practices. Obviously, like I was saying earlier, Mark and myself work with some of the best and brightest MSPs on the planet. And a lot of the time, we like to take what they're doing and also trickle that down to you guys. And also get feedback on ideas on product suggestions. Mark was just saying to me this morning, this is his favorite webinar that we do. And so much of it, it comes from the questions you guys ask and the feedback that you give us. Okay. Now, resources available to you, obviously, the automation cookbook. There's going to be probably a lot of questions today. I don't know if I'm going to be able to build out all of the automation or scripts that you have, but there is a growing list, and I need to update this slide because it says 300 plus policies and services available today. It is, I think, Mark can keep me on the rails, but it's probably close to 550 now. And it's growing exponentially very, very quickly. Thanks to people like you. Whenever you have a great automation policy or a script or custom monitoring, you'll pass that along to myself and Mark via the cookbook. You can click the upload button and submit. And hop into the Success forums, our Success Center forums, and ask any questions you may have, and hop into the MSP Institute for, again, any pre-recorded training or videos. Now, what is new? Now, what I did was I took some information, not all of it, because I'd be clicking through about 20 slides. There is about, I think, in the last month alone, between Mark, myself, and Charles, we have added around 50 new scripts and automation policies. The two highlights being the Windows 11 compatibility checker and also the Windows 10 update target to prevent Windows update. But I won't list them all, but you can kind of look through here. There is a lot, and I probably included about 30 in these kind of screen grabs, but just a ton of automation that we're adding. And again, thanks to partners like you. Now, of course, this is the Q&A portion, so let me just grab the questions pane because I didn't open that up first and see what questions you have. So if you have questions around automation, now is your time. Thankfully, I've got Mark. And also, if you have any questions on how-tos, configurations, anything to do with N-central, please ask those questions as well. Okay, so the first question from Marc-Andre Tanguay is, can you talk about the state of automation in regards to Office 365 and MFA requirements to manage accounts? There are some objects to be rebuilt, but in terms of a roadmap, that's something that we have to look at a little bit deeper. Another question from Kial. I have an off-topic question for the automation office hours, so sorry in advance. I seem to be running into issues with Intune integration. Too long, didn't read, TLDR. We are trying to set it up as an SI, but it seems that we keep having our profile convert to CSP, and was wondering how we get that resolved. We have specific admin profile in our office tenancy that was working in SI, but then we were unable to sign into new clients and had to get it reset, and the same user profile loaded up as CSP. That particular issue I have not seen, Kiel. That's a great one, and that is something that.
No,
Go ahead.
that's actually a very common thing with
Is it?
the internet integration. The way it works is you have to pick when you set it up initially. Do you want to go SI or CSP? You cannot do both. If you have some customers that are on the CSP and some that are on a SI, you have to go SI for everyone. You don't have a choice. If you are unsure, you want to go SI, because if you set up a CSP and you want to switch later, you have to call support, have them reset the whole thing, and then reset it up. For those of you that are not familiar, you have the system integrator or SI model when you set up Intune with a customer as a reseller, or you have the CSP, which is basically they're using your customer portal. So if you use one or the other, this will require you to pick. And 95% of people so far, I think, are using the do it by customer, which is a lot more time consuming, but that way you don't have the issue in the future if you have customers that are one way versus the other. Most companies will have 50 customers, uh, but yeah, some people will have 50 customers, and out of it, one or two will have the problem. So just something to keep in mind for sure.
Right, right. And maybe another question for you, Mark, because I don't know, for whatever reason, I can't think of it. Do AMPs always run in contextless?
They don't. They actually, by default in N-central, they'll run as local system. So that's the context they have. If you run as currently logged on user, then it uses that user's context. If you put manual credentials, it will run as of that user. And if you choose to do it as a specific credential from the device credentials, it will just pass that into the same thing. So you have 4 different ways to run a policy. In each way, you do have access to interact with the machine and do whatever you need to do. It's just local system is run without the desktop because there's no desktop for that user. But every other one actually should have whatever interaction you need it to do. You can do pop-ups, you can do whatever you need.
Right, and Matthew, maybe if you want to expand on it, like obviously you're asking for a reason. I'd love to understand, what the use case may be. Marc-Andre, okay, Jerry. Okay, so thank you for your work on Automation Manager. I am working on, and this is from Jerry, I am working on a policy that will remove a local user account and the local user profile folder named the same. I have a problem deleting the local user profile as there are folders in the user profile that don't have permissions. I have attempted to enable inheritance for all the folders, but still having problems. What are your thoughts on that one, Mark? Because I'm kind of at a loss. It's been a while since I looked at it.
No, so deleting the user is not a problem. You say delete the user and you're done. But if you have to go through every folder and remove that user from the permission, typically there's no real point. What it'll do is it'll leave a remnant of the NTFS permissions, and it won't matter. If you add a new user, it always makes a new SID, and the new SID will not have access to it, even though it's a brand new user. So it shouldn't matter. I've never seen this be an issue, to be honest. If you want to modify folder permission, I don't have much on that front, to be quite honest, but I'm sure there's ways around it. But I don't have anything handy for that, Jerry.
Yeah, I can't think of anything either in terms of, and Mark, maybe you can just refresh my memory. Like if you were to just go into a user profile and click delete, would it not just delete? Maybe I haven't done it in a long time, because you can certainly rename it, can you not? So
No,
can you
no, no.
not?
His point is that he wants to remove the user and he wants to also remove folder that he has access to, like remove the permission on those folders. So
Understood.
let's say he has
Gotcha.
a C/user A that he only has access to. You can right click to disable inheritance and then give himself access as the owner. Like he can take ownership. That is part
Right.
of the NTFS frame set. But if he's trying to do that automatically and find all those folders, I don't have a way for that. This is not something that I've really ever had to look at.
Right, right. And we don't have any kind of objects to reset permissions or inheritance or anything like that, correct?
Correct.
Right, right. Cool. Maybe there's some PowerShell script online. I'd have to kind of Google through it, but Who knows? Marc-Andre, what do you? Oh, okay. You're just doing some back and forth
Yeah,
with
yeah, yeah.
Mark. Okay, so that seems to be it for at least the list of questions. And again, this is your Q&A period with Mark and myself. If you have any questions around automation or again, and central patch management, AV, obviously, feel free to ask any questions around that. From James Dudley, I'm using the SSL expiry checker as a custom service to monitor expiring certificates. If I run this as an automate policy, it will give me the details of the certificate that is expiring, but I do not get this information when a ticket gets logged by the custom service. Is there a way of getting this information? Yes, you should be, well, I shouldn't say if it's configured correctly, but if you're able to monitor it, you should be able to pass that information along as in the ticket as well. James, just correct me. What are you using for maybe an integrated PSA? If you could just let me know what you're using for ticketing. So you're using ConnectWise, okay. So if you've got the monitoring set up and you've got the notification profile set up, it should be passing along the details of the custom service as well. But maybe I'm mistaken. So Mark, any thoughts on that?
No, by default, it should output whatever
Right.
the user, sorry, whatever the fields are on the custom service. If it doesn't, I'd say reach out to support. They'll have to review what's happening there. But normally, if it does go failed, then it shows you what the certificate is in the output of the custom service on the details tab. It should show that in there.
Yeah, yeah. And maybe have you made any changes to the custom service? Because I know sometimes things can get a little screwy with versioning. So maybe it's just something that you need to re-upload as the custom service or something like that, because it should be passing along that information. Marc-Andre, no changes have been made. Okay, so I don't have a good answer for that one, but again, if you I don't know if you want to maybe just kind of delete it and re-add it. If that doesn't work, again, like Mark said, you probably have to get with support on that, because it should be. Marc-Andre, I have a question regarding policy. Jason, can you show the way to mention to update existing policies without reapplying the whole thing? Maybe I'm at a loss here. I have a question regarding policy. Jason, can you show
No,
the way?
when you were talking earlier, you said there's a way you can upload the policy and update them without having to reapply and change the service and whatever. Just modifying a policy and re-uploading.
Without changing the policy.
Yeah, so
Man,
basically if you go in Central, if you don't share your screen, if you go to Automation Manager, if you do upload a policy that's used as a custom service or in different tasks, you can simply click upload and it will change. As long as you don't change any input or output, even though if it's used in a custom service, it will update the policy and it will pass a new one to any custom service for the next execution. So yeah, so when you're into somewhere, you start automation, yeah, sure. Oh, there it is on your screen. Okay, so when you're here, if I open up a policy or open up from in Central, let's say a policy that I'm modifying like this one is used for a custom service, or actually this one is too. So I have a policy here and I make a simple change into my script. So I do edit and I say, hashtag hello, because there's a hashtag, it won't change anything. I do okay. If you simply do upload here, it will update the policy without having any changes done to anything. It won't give you a hard time. There you go. So even though it's used as a custom service, it's used onto actual active devices, it will simply replace the policy. Now, if I come here and I change anything here, rename, do any change whatsoever to output or input, then it won't work anymore because the database structure changes for a custom service. It's used in devices. It's going to break. It's not going to work. So that's important, right? But just clicking the upload button, as long as you only change the content in the middle, you don't break anything, you can simply re-upload and use as is. Now, one thing that you can also do, as of fairly recently, you can do upload as, which will make a brand new copy with a brand new ID. If you open the automation policy in Notepad or Notepad++ or whatever, you'll notice an XML file and there's an ID in it. and that ID is embedded into everything we do. When you click upload as, it makes a brand new one, so that if you upload and modify that later, it's completely separated from the original one. A lot of times people will do a maintenance policy, will say, oh, I'm going to make a slightly different version, and then they upload over the existing one. You want to do upload as to avoid that. But either or, well, the upload, sorry, I went a little sidetracked, but that's what it does.
A question from Kevin. What is the most efficient and effective way to completely deny the Windows 11 update from installing on machines? Is it a feature update to deny, or an automation that will force deny it? Or an automation that will force deny it until we decide it's time to install it? I did see the prevent Windows 11 update. Is this the only option presently? Actually, and Mark, while you're in Central, can you just unlock and give me a password or something for Central, if you don't mind? Because I'll circle back to that one once I get in. Thanks, Mark. Yeah, just reach out on Slack and we can chat through it for sure. There is another question. I want to be able to enable Bitlocker on a large customer that we're onboarding. Do you have an automation policy for that? Well, that is a great question, because I just went through that with another partner recently. Just give me 1 second. You should be able to see it here in a minute. Just let me know if you can see it there, Mark.
Yep.
Here we go. And there you have it, my friend. So what you can do is, if you have a customer that you're onboarding and they have a bunch of laptops, everybody's working from home because of the plague, what you're going to be able to do is turn that on. Okay, so this will allow you to, and here you have it. Okay, so I won't open it up in PowerShell, but as you can see, mount point C, and there you go. Okay, so you can use something like that to run through Central and enable Bitlocker on all of your, on your large customer that you're onboarding. The screen share is many seconds behind. Yeah, it is. Okay, so give me 1 second here. Just be able to hop on my VPN. It just takes a moment. I'll get my Chrome ready. Sorry for the technical difficulties, folks, but it wouldn't be a webinar without a slight glitch. So, Mark, if you could do me a slight favor until I can sort through my VPN issue here. Sure. Can you just pull up in Central and go to patch approvals in patch management?
All right. Which one do you want?
Yeah, just go to automatic to start with. So again, I'll just go back to the question from Kevin. What is the most efficient and effective way to completely deny a Windows 11 update? Okay, so Mark, if you just click on that decline Windows 11. So what I wrote a blog on this. So if you go to n-able.com/blogs, somewhere in the first page, you'll see how to decline Windows 11. The good news is that Microsoft didn't really offer it like they did Windows 10. You know, day one on the Windows 10 release date, everybody kind of was able to get Windows 10. With Enable, we kind of learned from that, and unless the endpoint is now calling for it, it's not getting it. And they're doing a very much a staggered release on that. So what I've told people to do is, and this is for if you want to apply to all customers, okay? So this is a kind of a set and forget it way until you're ready to deploy to a particular customer or you want to release it en masse. So what you're going to do is select both feature packs and upgrades, okay? And then what you're going to do is go down and open up Microsoft for me there, Mark, and then scroll down to Windows. And then what you're basically going to be able to do is select all Windows and go down, and then you're going to basically select everything under the Windows. You can apply to children. Somebody wanted me to update the blog on that, but it's one of those things. Click on targets, and then what you're going to be able to do is choose your patch rules, right? So I didn't actually do it in this example, but say I have patch Windows workstations and laptops where it's set to no approval. I would then click that and set that to decline, right? So that is what you would want to do for an immediate, overall decline across all of your customers. That's kind of a hardline stance. Until I'm ready or until my customers are ready, then I'm just simply going to blanket decline it across everybody. That is the automatic way, okay? So that is what I've told people to do. But again, you can check out my blog for kind of more detailed instructions if you just go to n-able.com/blogs and look for the N-Central Windows 11 decline. All right, so that is one way you can do it as well. Jude, thanks Jason and Marc-Andre for helping me with staying on Windows 10. There has not been an issue till date. Any update on the step you provide me? I don't have any kind of further instructions around the Windows 10 11 or Windows 11 decline, Jude, for example. But it's one of those things where maybe I'll include some instructions on how to approve it. I don't think I necessarily need to, because obviously you're going to be able to target your particular customer when they're ready. I mean, for right now, I think we're all kind of cautiously waiting for the next few months and just simply declining it across the board. So that's what I've kind of done. Yeah, and Matthew, you're absolutely right. The reason why I get that always wrong is because it is success.n-able.com/cookbooks, and the blogs is n-able.com/blog, which always gets me. I always get that wrong. So thank you for correcting me on that. It is just blog, singular. Okay, so I appreciate that. And yeah, thanks for linking in the blog here. I don't know if I can copy and paste from. No. Well, I will put it in the chat though. So thank you for doing that. I'll actually just pull it up here while I go through a few things and not. Okay, so I'll have to deal with the whole N-Central password thing a little bit later. My apologies. Next question from David. Okay, so if an endpoint has multiple rules applied with different settings, is there an order of priority? That is a great question, Matt or David, because there's not. You would think that rules apply from kind of top to bottom. That is not how it works. You have to think of the rules engine in N-Central much like your the rules engine in your Microsoft Outlook. It's based on criteria. And you have to think, when you add an agent to an endpoint, or if you're adding a probe and doing any kind of network monitoring, or you're putting probe on a server, based on the asset information that we discover, like we're collecting all of that asset metadata, pulling it into N-Central, and based on that, these rules just kind of kick in, right? They're not always, evaluating, right? They're not behind the scenes. When something changes, right? Like when I add in a new rule, or for example, if I installed SQL into a server, that is when rules kick in. It's based on what N-Central sees, and then that criteria just simply gets applied. I'd love to know more about your use case, because obviously you're asking for a reason. So if you have a good use case as to why that's important to you, I'd love to kind of speak to it. Okay. And again, hopefully I'm not butchering your name, but I'm going to call it Kial, or it could be Kyle. I don't know. But you can keep me on the rails here. Just as a heads up on the Bitlocker encryption automation that was brought up earlier, we had an issue with our automation as some laptops were coming in with Bitlocker volume status as fully encrypted out of the box, and our automation we use for setting up systems was producing 2 keys. Because of that in the output file, we since have fixed it and will do an if-else in the automation, but it did cause some issues with properly documenting the Bitlocker keys. And Kial, if you want, or Kyle, sorry, if you want, if there's any changes you did make to your automation policy or the PowerShell script, by all means, keep myself and Mark in the now as to kind of what you did, because obviously we want to ensure that that automation is going to work. And yeah, Mark just kind of sent you off his email there. Okay, and we're coming near the end of the questions. If you do have any other questions around N-Central or automation, please, obviously feel free to ask those now. I am still not able to get into my VPN. So it is an issue for me to hop into N-Central, because normally I would, fill in any time with, something I'd like to show you or what have you, and now that is not able to happen. So my sincere apologies. But again, if you do have any questions, please let myself and Mark know, and obviously we can address anything for you. Surely you have a question on something automation, because hey, the breadth and scope of automation is pretty big, so feel free to ask away. John, J-H-O-N, that's an interesting way. Okay, so let me just try one thing here. Is there an automation to deploy Office 365 via N-Central? Well, there is. And if you head on over to the cookbook itself, oh, am I not sharing again? Okay, so you should be able to. But yes, I mean, the Office 365 automation is fairly involved. And again, if you head on over to the cookbook, feel free to download any of those Office 365 automation policies, and obviously help yourselves with deploying things like Office, and configuring Office 365. David, the use case for the rules is that we have a default rule for applying, example, patch management. If a customer has a specific agreement, they will get applied to an agreement rule. So now the endpoint is under two rules that both have patch management. Okay, now this is perfect. All right, so let me explain how that works, right? And when I worked at a really big MSP, we had 4 programs. We had a starter program, we had some kind of a la carte, we kind of sold anything to anybody. Patch management might have been one of them, AV, for example. We had a proactive program, and then we had our kind of fully managed fixed fee program. So I had to kind of design different ways how to do patch management based on what the customer was buying from us. And then now I will tell you, I took a very hardline approach to how patch management worked for our customers. I felt like, hey, I'm the MSP. I patched tens of thousands of endpoints. I'm going to as part of my SLA tell the small business how they were going to patch. Most of the time that worked. I would say for above 90% of my customers, as long as it didn't interfere with their day-to-day too much, they were fine. But if you need to separate how you target your customers based on these programs or agreements that you're selling to your customers, again, that target is really defined by a rule. Now, this is a blanket rule or a blanket filter in N-Central for things like workstations and laptops, right? Based on your customer, right? Now, what happens if I need to do tray differently? Well, one, I can segment them simply by the customer name. But what if you have, and this happens all the time, a really large customer where you have to do some things differently than the others? Servers, this happens with servers all the time. Hey, I want to be able to patch the hosts or say install, let's say reboots. I want to do reboots differently between Hyper-V VMs than Hyper-V hosts. That's the one I get all the time. Or the other one I get all the time is, there's no way I can reboot the entire environment. The DC has to come up before everything else. I'll argue that, but let's just say that's true, okay? So what you have to be able to do is understand, and let me just open this up, how to use custom properties. Now, we have spent a lot of love building out custom properties. And again, you can do it by customers, you can do it by devices. I typically do devices. I keep a very simplistic way. A lot of our partners, especially the partners I work with, love using drop-down types like yes or no. So you can turn patch on or off. or say patch on a particular day if it matches that name. Like you're going to get rebooted on a Saturday as opposed to the VMs. Let's do that again. Let's say Hyper-V host will be patched or rebooted on the Sunday, but all VMs will go down on the Saturday, right? You can do a lot of different things with these. Now, I typically always do text type, in most scenarios. Reason being is that I'll come in and tag a server with a couple different text types, right? So say it's weekend, if I spell it right? So I've got weekend sat, and then I'll do another one, same thing. Okay, now I'm leaving the default text blank here, right? Now if I go to Trey, and we've got Exchange here, we'll just use that as an example, right? Now, under the custom properties, I can now change this to, and I'm just going to call it Saturday, right? Okay. Now, for the example, because we're not going to spend too much more time on it, is that I can now segment my devices the way I want to. Now, I do this very statically, right? Whereas, again, a lot of our partners will like to manipulate. We'll use drop downs, like you do any day of the week using drop downs. So you've got Monday through Sunday, right? And then you can pick and choose what those custom properties really do based on the reboots you want. David, I hope that explains things a little bit better, but again, it is all based on the filter, which is then tied to the custom property. So I hope that makes sense. Now this might be one for Mark, okay? Only because I simply don't understand it. Do amps support recursion? Can an amp invoke itself? Mark, are you able to take that one?
Yeah, so when you look into an automation policy from Automation Manager, you have the run policy option. So if I add that object real quick, let me just see. I know you can run a different policy. I don't know if you can run yourself. I'm just trying here. That one's the Meraki something. Meraki connected device. I guess you can. It's letting me do it. It's not complaining. So I guess in theory it is possible, but I really advise against it. So what you're looking for is the object you're looking for is called run a policy, which will allow you to run a different policy. So I do that when I do master policies. What I would do with that is I would say, okay, I want to run a policy to build a PC, and then the first thing I do is run a policy to create a user. The next one is to install these apps. The next one is to set this security thing, and the next one is to whatever. So that master policy calls a bunch of sub policies, and that's good because if you ever want to do just one of those things, you don't need to make 50 versions of it. You just have that policy. But it seems that it's letting me pick myself when I go to use that object. So in theory, it's possible. Just look at the run policy object, and I think you're going to do what you want. But I would really advise against it because you may just infinitely loop yourself, and that would be a very bad thing. But in theory, from what I'm seeing, it's possible.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Mark. And again, we're down to our last question so far. If you do have any more questions, please feel free to drop that in the questions pane. Again, it can be custom properties, it can be patch management, automation, anything you want in terms of our N Central. Now, let me just pull up one other thing here, because one thing that keeps popping up time and time again is, one moment here. On our last boot camp, and this is something that a lot of our partners either aren't aware of, but if you're in the know around third-party patching of Chrome, right? There's obviously like a 32-bit or a 64-bit, right? So one thing you may want to look at is, get Chrome 32 or 64-bit version. This is one that keeps coming up time and time again. I did want to kind of point this one out, only because our partners really want to understand what version of Chrome is installed so that they can patch it correctly. Okay. Now there is one more question here, or a couple questions here. From Matthew, is there any way to write an output parameter to a custom property when one of the AMP objects fail? I will say no, but Mark, keep me on the rails if I'm wrong here. Only because from what I understand, if there is a problem with the AMP, like if you're talking about an object, I'll say hard no, but if there's a problem with the AMP, I don't believe you can do like an error code to to a custom property. And Mark, am I correct on that one?
Yeah, so if a policy or an object itself fails, so let's say you run an object to get logged on user, and for some unknown reason that execution fails for any reason, what it's going to do is send you a result of 1. Some objects under result, result would be 1, and then some objects under result string will show you some details of what happened. But that result of 0 or 1 basically is your pass fail. 0 means it's okay, 1 means it didn't execute the way it should. And then you'll just skip over and move on, right? But that is the way the objects are built. It doesn't give you any more output than that. Now, if you want to save something specific when that happens, you could just say if the result is 1, then do something. But keep in mind the policy would report as completed with error because it didn't complete normally. But if that's what you're looking for, yes, you can.
From Atlee, when using a password field as a global input, it seems to be displayed in the output of the AMP. Is this intended? I would say no, but I could be wrong. Mark?
I'd love to see that though. The password field is encrypted throughout for obvious reasons. You can actually not make it into an input. You cannot pre-type it as an input for obvious reasons. So I'd love to see that example. So Atlee, if you want, I'll give you my email. Just reach out to me, send me the policy that you see that in, and I'd love to take a look because if that is the case, I'd love to have that troubleshot and obviously fixed. That is not intended whatsoever.
Right. And obviously we don't want to expose passwords unintendedly. So yes,
No.
If you want to send that over to Mark, that would be greatly appreciated, Atlee. Thank you. Okay, Marc-Andre, it happens on script. I'll email you a ticket. Okay, you'll communicate that with Mark. Matthew's going to clarify. To clarify my question, when an object fails, the AMP is considered to have failed. If the output parameter is completely unrelated to the failing object, it still won't write to the custom property.
Oh, so if the policy returns any failure code, it won't write to the CDP. That feels like a bug to me, Matthew. I would say open a support ticket. If you already done that, just give us a number. We'll have that escalated, but that is not what I would expect it to do. I don't see why it would not complete. It should.
Yeah, and I'm just going to send him my email this time.
Well, yeah, either or.
You don't get inundated with a bunch. We can split some some issues here. So yes, if you want to send that over to jmurphy@n-able.com, I'll work with you on that support issue, Matthew. And again, let's just go back to our trusty slides. And we did the poll. Again, if that is it for the questions today, and again, you feel free, if you've got any questions left or if you came late, feel free to ask any questions within the next minute or two. And again, if you do have any questions, great. And if you do not, thank you so much for attending. Obviously, I didn't mean to struggle with my N-Central, but here we are. So I do appreciate your attendance, and obviously we will see you on the next automation office hours. We actually do have one more question from Andrew. Okay, great. So this is why I don't close it. I always give a few minutes near the end. Okay, so I know a few of you have left, but there's probably a few of you kicking around. So the question from Andrew is this, and this is a good one. Is the N-Central agent data exposed to Automation Manager? For example, can I get custom property values? Yes. So the answer to that is 100%. If you have custom properties, you can. Oh, I see. Okay. So, and this is what I'm understanding your question. Can I use custom properties as, say, inputs for automation? The answer to that would be yes. So I think what you're saying is that, do these custom properties get exposed to Automation Manager? And the answer to that is yes, 100%. So oftentimes you will need an input under a particular customer or a particular device that can be mapped within Automation Manager. So when you save that policy, you will then, that is where you then map it to the CDP or the CP. I always call it CDP. CP. That's where you would map that, Andrew. Hopefully that answers your question. Okay. This is from Matthew. When you invoke an amp within an amp, you can pass input output to it? You can. 100%. So if you ever want to look at a good example of how to use inputs in automation, head on over to the cookbook. So go to success.n-able.com/cookbooks with an S. Hopefully by now you know where the cookbook is. Download the Meraki, right? And there's actually an instruction manual on how to use organizational IDs. Basically, what you're going to do, what it tells you to do is input things like the REST API information. All of that is housed in Central as inputs. So it's an excellent example on how to use inputs within your automation, right? And how to kind of tie them together. So yes, 100%, you can definitely do that. So you could recurse an amp and pass a global variable to prevent infinite recursion. Mark, you might have to translate that one in terms of, I don't know if Mark is still around or not. But.
No, what Matt is saying that you could basically have a policy and keep passing a variable over and over to prevent that it just never ends. But to my point, I still would not advise it. If you want to say, hey, if you're done with this amp or whatever, or something happens, rerun it in 5 minutes type of deal, there's still a global timeout usually of an hour, and that's intended. So I would typically not recommend going down that road. But if that is what you're looking for, I mean, you're welcome to do it. It will let you. You could use global variable, passes input and outputs, and so on. But yeah, I personally don't like that because you have a never-ending loop that's possible for one chance or the other, and then that's just very unpleasant for everyone, right? So I would still advise against it. But yes, you're right. You can, and you can do it this way for sure. I just personally don't like it.
Okay, excellent. Thanks, Matthew. Okay, guys, it looks like that is it for all of the questions today. Again, I appreciate your attendance. If you have any other questions, again, you can reach out to myself. That's jmurphy@n-able.com, and have yourself a great rest of your day. Okay, take care. See you next time.